Hello there everybody, Fast LEGO Studios here, and welcome back guys to week 3 of building up the LEGO Simpsons Springfield. Let's jump right into it. And before I dive in any further into building the LEGO Simpsons Springfield for week number 3, I once more want to mention to you guys that I've uploaded the LEGO Simpsons Krusty Burger onto LEGO Ideas. And what that means is if the project achieves 10,000 supporters, it'll be taken into consideration by the LEGO group to potentially bring back the short-lived LEGO Simpsons theme. And guys, we're really not that far away from hitting 10K. We're nearly at the edge of hitting 5K, meaning we're nearly officially at the halfway mark to be hitting the potential possibility of bringing back this LEGO Simpsons theme. So if you guys haven't already and want to see the short-lived LEGO Simpsons theme return back on the shelves, you guys can click the link in the description of this video, click support, and we'd be another step closer to potentially bringing back this short-lived LEGO Simpsons theme. But with all of that information out of the way, let's get back to week number 3. Alright guys, and jumping right into week number 3, I've got quite a bit of things planned for this week's episode. First off, starting off with the front of the model. Previously in week number 1, I said that I'll be changing out these LEGO hinge elements into reddish brown. Well, it unfortunately turns out that these pieces only came in like 2 LEGO sets back in 2002, so they are quite rare and just not found in new condition on Bricklink. So at the moment, I think I'm just going to stick with using tan going around here, just making all of those just parts in tan, then having the brown windows as usual. So this part will be staying just about the same, and I do realize now why LEGO actually opted out with the tan hinges than the reddish brown. But hopefully sometime soon, LEGO does actually come out with even more of those plates in reddish brown, so I can then replace the old ones right here in tan over into the more correct colors. As goes for other progress, in terms of the entire just height of the entire Simpsons house, I probably will not be able to get too much height done in this week's episode, because given the quantity of LEGO bricks that I have going on right over here is just enough to build up one of the floors to the entire LEGO Simpsons house. I do have a bricks and pieces order coming in very soon, but unfortunately I don't think it'll be able to arrive in time for this week's episode. In terms of the interior of the build, I'm just really hoping to add in even more just tiny little nice features going into the overall build of the Simpsons house. Get the rumpus room built up. Last week's episode we just built up the overall just dimensions of how much room we'll be working with, but this time around we'll be actually building on all of the tiles into the floor here, and then having like cupboards going up in here, and all the other little things going into there. The rumpus room itself was only shown in about 5 episodes from The Simpsons, so that's all of my reference points going into that little room right there. And making our way over into the garage of the Simpsons house, what I want to get done in here is get the base plate that's supposed to be going right in here all in place. And now surely that base plate itself will not actually be connecting to any of the actual LEGO Simpsons house, but instead onto a separate giant LEGO base plate that is going to be attached to the entire Simpsons house instead. And then that'll basically be the very same concept of how each and every single other building in Springfield is going to be attached to the entire base plate. So it's all going to be just placed on a one base plate, and this here, the garage itself, will be attached by itself. It'll be an individual assembly from the entire house, but will be connected to that entire LEGO plate. And then as goes for other things, I as well want to get the garage door right the way in place on the Simpsons house, get that in place, and get that sliding mechanism for the entire door itself to be just sliding back into the entire garage itself. But with all of that being in mind, plenty of building to be done in this week's episode, and plenty of still research to be done with like the rumpus room and how it looks, but I think we can pull it all off in this week's episode. So without further ado guys, let's jump in to those progress updates right now. Alright guys, and jumping right into the very first update of the week here, you guys can see that I've got quite a bit of progress done throughout the entire LEGO Simpsons house. But starting our way from the front and working our way to the back, first off, you guys can see that I've added in these two windows going right about here. Once again, just as I mentioned earlier in this week's episode, with these hinges being right here, I would have initially liked them to be in reddish brown, but turns out that those pieces are quite rare in that color at the moment. So until LEGO does go ahead and produce another LEGO set, or just produce the part overall in just reddish brown, I'll be switching that out as soon as possible. But for now, this is basically the overall aesthetic of those windows as a whole. You guys may also notice this tiling area already being placed into the build. Well, this is just the very first floor all complete. This is the highest point that the very first floor is going to go up to, and then what's next after this is literally an entire layer of plates over the entire first floor, and then we begin building up the second floor. This here is just to make everything nice and connected over onto the very first floor of the Simpsons house. But as we make our way over into the garage of the Simpsons house, you guys can see that I've got quite a bit of just exterior work done to the overall model. But starting to take a look at the roof at the moment here, you guys can see that I've got just the very basic understanding of how these roof panels are going to be going together. This one not being the final design whatsoever, just getting an understanding of like how they work and how they're going to be attached to the overall sloping roof of the model. Over into the garage itself, previously on the previous LEGO Simpsons house, this garage here opened up just like this. You had the garage itself just open up like that, and that's all that one did. Well, if you guys notice, by the Simpsons TV show, the entire garage not only opens up like this, but it also pushes in. So what I've taken the liberty to do here is literally to modify the entire garage so it pushes the entire build in. And if any of you guys are wondering how does that garage mechanism work, it's quite very simple with just having a railing kind of assembly being placed here, and then whenever we just push the garage itself back, just slides across that little part of the build. I find this to be the slightest bit more accuracy to the show, and just makes it look a lot more realistic to what an actual garage will do. But then as goes for the overall just colors of the garage door itself, you guys can see that we clearly have a light bluish gray LEGO 4x8 plate. Now that one being in very inaccurate color, it's supposed to be this nougat color right here, but I once again have a bricks and pieces order coming in, which should have this 4x8 LEGO plate in nougat, so it's all nice in one shade of colors. So all of that should be happening very soon, probably at this point by next week's episode. And then as we take a look over into the interior of the garage, there really isn't too much to be looking at in here. Still a lot of building to do, but I think by the next update I will be able to get the base plate and some of the interior to the overall garage in place. And then as we make our way over into the rumpus room of the Simpsons house, you guys can see I've got the very basic flooring pattern in place with like having a little bit of the carpet itself already attached in here. And as well as I've been building this room up here, I've noticed that my bricks and pieces order has quite a very good majority of the pieces that are supposed to be going in here to build up the room itself. So unfortunately, by this week's episode, I don't really think that we'll be able to build up too much of the rumpus room. But with that being in mind, you guys also saw that I've got this little chair being placed into the build. Just a nice little other touch being added into the rumpus room. Very similar chair kind of design that we have going on in the living room of the Simpsons house, but has very minor little changes being done all throughout. And then speaking of the living room of the Simpsons house, you guys can see I've added in some of these tiles to accommodate for the family pictures that I mentioned earlier in this week's episode. But that right there, guys, is all of the progress that I've gotten done for this update. Still plenty of building to go across the interior of the house, but I've really been focusing in this update to really get the overall exterior of the house in place. But with all of that being said, let's continue with those updates. Alright guys, and jumping right into the very next update of the week here, I've gotten a little bit more progress done to the overall Simpsons house. And now taking a closer look at it, you guys can see that in terms of the garage, I've got the just base plate that's supposed to be going into the garage already all in place. The base plate itself is not actually connected to the garage of the entire Simpsons house, just as I mentioned earlier here, but I finally got that in place, and now we just have a little bit more flooring to go within the house itself. This makes the entire Simpsons house, the entire foundation of the Simpsons house, all complete, and now all that is really left to do from this point forward, just build up the house a lot more, get every other little detail in place, and we'll finish the Simpsons house as a whole. But then getting back into taking a look of what we have in the Simpsons garage, you guys can see that I've got these 4 table legs being placed right here. Soon enough, that will be accommodating for a tabletop, which once again, I currently do not have that piece at the moment. But what's supposed to be going on top of that tabletop is one of these kind of cage elements being placed right here, similar towards what we have going on this wall here, to accommodate for these workshop tools that are just going to be going onto these Droid arms off to the side. But then getting back to taking a look at this mini assembly right here, you guys can see I've slipped through a couple of these 1x2 Lego plates with a clip. It took a little bit of force to get these in, but in the end, these 2 clips went in, and I did that just because I wanted to get yet another Lego shelf going right across here, being slightly lower than what you guys can see right here, with having yet another shelf. I just wanted to get a tad bit more accuracy with having that one being lower and this one being a slight bit higher. And right on top of that shelf at the moment here, you guys can see I've just added in a couple of wooden planks. I'm really trying to stay as true to the show as possible, incorporating all of the very fine little details that are all depicted within the garage. And then as goes for other details here, you guys can see I've added in this opened box right here. There's quite a bit of open boxes as a whole in the entire Simpsons garage, which I'll try and capture sometime soon. And then as other details go, I want to have a cabinet being built right here, and then right beside that we'll be having a garden hose. Not the connector, which is right here, but the actual hose that's supposed to be connected up into that little piece. And at the moment, there really isn't too much to go on the opposite side of the garage, aside from yet another box being placed right here. And as we exit the garage of the Simpsons house and enter into one of the hallways, you guys can see I've added in a couple of 2x2 tiles in here. Soon enough, I should be getting plenty more of these, just running across the entire hallway here. But at the moment, once again, I'm really waiting until that bricks and pieces order comes in. And as goes for other progress that I've gotten done here, you guys can see I've got this entire wall right here being pushed a little bit more further in. That is for just to get the accommodation and just the interpretation of having like a cupboard assembly that's soon enough going to be going in here. With this being like a cupboard, it would make best of sense for this entire wall right here, essentially on either side, to be pushed out a little bit further. And as goes for other very minor little additions added into the build, is I've added in these couple of 1x2 Lego plates with some tiles running around them. And the reason I've really done that there is just to get the overall connection when we get the second floor of the Simpsons house attached to be a nice and firm connection, but not too firm to the point where to just get into the very first floor, we have to pry open the second floor. So just a very nice and light connection there, but not too light to the point where it's literally just able to be pulled off. But that right there, guys, is all of the progress that I've gotten done for this week's episode. We've made some really nice progress with getting the entire just front of the build in place, getting a bit of the garage complete, getting that functional door in place, and getting a little bit more progress in the rumpus room. But with all of that being in mind, let's move out into the outro and finish off week number 3. And there we are, guys, at the end of building the LEGO Simpsons Springfield for week number 3. Yet again, making absolutely amazing progress in this week's episode. Really concentrating upon the overall exterior aesthetic of the build, getting the windows in place, getting a little bit more experimentation and understanding with how those roofs are going to be going together, getting the mechanism of the garage in place, and just slightly focusing upon the interior of the garage and the rumpus room in this week's episode. But now, moving into next week's episode, and what progress I want to make then is really to get a good more majority of the interior of the Simpsons house in place. We've really been focusing upon the exterior quite a lot in this week's episode, and really just leaving behind the overall interior of the model. So we have plenty of building still to go there, but once again, mentioned earlier in this week's episode, as I said that I still have that bricks and pieces order coming in. Once that does finally arrive, I should be able to continue the construction of the LEGO Simpsons Springfield. But really, until then, I really do not have too many LEGO pieces to work with, so I can continue upon building the LEGO Simpsons Springfield. But once again, guys, if you have not yet supported the LEGO Simpsons Krusty Burger on LEGO Ideas yet, highly recommend you guys go and support that LEGO project, because we're nearly at the halfway mark to potentially bringing back the short-lived LEGO Simpsons theme. So close, we're just getting there, and just potentially bringing back the theme on shelves. But with all things considered, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, and comments down below in the comment section of what are your guys' thoughts on the LEGO Simpsons house so far. But with all of that being said, keep on building, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.